Hi everyone, this is Sinette here for our sole video on redefining words. So in this video we're going to continue in our process of understanding what it means to redefine a word, and within that redefine yourself. And the redefining and living process is quite close to one another in the sense that they actually assist and support each other. Step 2 and step 3, which is the redefining and the living of a word. And as much as your redefinition process of a word happens in your writing and looking at the word and your relationship with the word in your everyday life, and then you start practicing that redefinition through the living, the applying in your everyday life. And then you go back again to your redefinition that you've written down and that you've looked at. And by cross-referencing the way you live and then how you've written the redefinition, you'll find that sometimes when you live a word, wait a minute, there's some definitions here that I need to look at and work on because it's not working so well in my living application. Then you go back to your writing, you check, okay, what was not aligned when I tried to live this word and apply it or become it in a moment. What did I not take into consideration? And then you write it out again, and then like the next day you live and apply the word again. And it's fascinating because in that process of redefining and living, it assists and supports with settling down and grounding your mind a lot more into reality. And because oftentimes something works in our head, but then when it comes to reality, it's the complete opposite happens. So that's also, it has a lot to do with, even if you simply have a look at your everyday life, how much we actually think about everything else in our thoughts and our projections and our experiences. We very seldom really look at and process things in a realistic manner, considering how our reality actually works, who and how people really are and who and how we are in relationship to them. So for me personally as well, and this is what I'll start sharing with, is how my process of redefining and living the word trust, because this is also going to guide us into our next videos, which will be about living words. But starting with redefining words, I found that, in my head, from continuing with the previous video where I mentioned how my initial redefinition of the word trust, about my self-trust, and how can I create trust within me, and where would I want to start? Let's maybe also start within this point first and foremost, which is what I mentioned in the previous video. Is you want to look at a word first and foremost in your relationship with yourself, because in becoming a word, in living a word, and defining it as you understand a lot more about that word and what it actually really means for you, but more importantly with your relationship with others. And then, as I mentioned, with trust, it was always only ever about trusting everything and everyone else. A definition of trust or self-trust didn't even exist in me in a way where I could say that I'm actually living it. I am trust. I trust myself in this context, in this regard, in this relationship, in these types of moments, in these situations. I could not even write a paragraph of what trust, self-trust means for me. And within this journey and process of redefining trust and self-trust for myself, this is where that definition and opening of trust expanded in a way where it's now not so much just about trusting everything and everyone else, but instead assisting and supporting others in standing equally with me in our trust and our self-trust, where I assist and support others to also develop a self-trust, a trust within themselves. Because once you have that, in various different contexts, relationships, situations, moments, and things that happen in everyday life. You become a lot more independent within yourself. Your trust or self-trust, or the definition of trust, is not confined to just one thing or one type of area or dimension within yourself and your life. It becomes so much more expansive in that, with me, I started my process of redefining and living trust or self-trust just purely with my emotions. But then I started experiencing the signature of what that trust or that self-trust feels like. And I could define that signature more. The signature meaning that experience, that feel that you have where, and it's not an energy, it's like a knowing, but a real knowing with valid, realistic, physical proof of the fact that, of why I know I trust myself and I can trust myself. Meaning when my process with emotions started, did I fall? Did I stand up? Did I make mistakes? Of course. I mean, that's part of the process and the journey of change, of challenging yourself. I think, within this process, if anything, what this process does, the defining, redefining, and living of words, is that it pushes that point of self-challenge. But that has been the most self-empowering point ever, because I know that I'm challenging me on a personal capacity within myself, my relationship with me. And it's like, in a way, we are quantifying our own self-development, our own self-growth, our own, let's call it self-evolution, because you know where your weaknesses are inside yourself, and you've kind of now stood in front of yourself saying to yourself, right, come on, time is now. These weaknesses are becoming strengths. I'm going to see who I can become if I challenge me. So, that point right there has assisted and supported me a lot in this process, especially moments where things get a bit tough, and I really want to give up. But then I just remind myself, come on, yes, you're going through this challenge, these difficulties, these mistakes. No, you want to give up, but what are you going to give up on? You're going to give up on you breaking through and transcending and learning and growing and expanding. And otherwise, you're just going to be stuck remaining this person, for the rest of your life, or, wait for things to happen in your life before you get challenged in some way or another, where you're kind of forced to grow, to expand, to develop. So there's two primary points or dimensions that I'd like to finalize within this video when it comes to redefining words. And that is that signature experience that you get, which is that knowing, but it has proof of the fact that that you can trust yourself in a given context or situation or moment or relationship. And then within that, what I mentioned in the beginning of the video, that process of redefining and living and redefining and living, to kind of start, let's say, setting your mind in a way where you look at things a lot more practically and realistically, more tangibly, because of how we have conditioned ourselves with a tendency to kind of look at reality purely through our thoughts and our emotions. And, we've all had those moments where we think about something or someone in a certain way, have all these experiences inside ourselves, but when reality comes, it's the complete opposite. So we need to create an equilibrium between how we look at things inside ourselves and what's really going on within this real world. All right. And there, I also have an example for you. So, let's start, and this is also another way where each one of you can start. I ask myself, okay, what within myself or my life that is personal to me do I want to start practice defining, redefining, and living the word trust or self-trust? Yes, you can start within yourself, or just look at your everyday life, goings in and going out, meaning what do you do? What's your routine? Where, in what moments in your life can you practice trust or self-trust? So for me, it was my emotions, because I, earlier on in my process, struggled an exceptional amount with my emotions. Very, very emotional. All over the place, all the time. And, my emotions was my specific process or journey, because there's a lot that I learned about myself through my emotions, and how emotions actually operate and function in so many different ways, because initially for me, I thought, emotions are just emotions, I'm an emotional person, that's me. Not realizing, with getting to know how my mind works and my emotions work, that emotions can be used for manipulation, for spite, for hiding, for running away, for fueling an experience inside yourself even more and more and more, to make things worse than what they really are. Using emotions to not see the truth, to kind of deny or suppress things inside yourself. Using emotions because it had a certain level of an addictive property to it, where I conditioned my mind and body so much with emotions throughout my life, I thought I couldn't live without being so overly emotional. So there was like this whole world that opened up in understanding how emotions work. And other times, yes, emotions was just a release, where I'd gone through a process or a trauma or a shock, and the emotional experiences was just that pure physical release from the trauma and the shock. There's also that dimension of emotions that's quite cool in how it can support with a release, but for most part, emotions has got quite a story within and behind it. So that's why I wanted to start with developing a trust within myself when it came to let's more say dealing with and getting to know and understanding my emotional experiences and who I am within them. But for you, you can also have a look at, because from there I started expanding it to having a look where I had, in certain situations or contexts or responsibilities and obligations, tendency to postpone, to procrastinate. So I started practicing trusting myself to become more disciplined. Then having a look at waking up in the mornings. There were days where I had this experience in me, I just really didn't want to wake up. So developing a trust where, despite that experience, I wake up and I rather investigate and introspect and understand the experience that's causing me to not want to wake up and greet this day, this opportunity, this life that is waiting for me to walk into it. So there's some more examples of where you can start with redefining words. Just look at purely yourself and your everyday life, and give yourself at least a month or 3, to consistently practice the redefining and the living of the context in which you're going to assist and support yourself to develop trust or self-trust. Now getting into that signature that I was talking about, because once you get that signature, what I mean by signature, it's a knowing, it's that experience of, okay, I can trust myself. You can then start expanding your definition of trust and self-trust to so many other things in your life, because now you know what that trust means, what that knowing, that experience, that sensation that belongs to you and only you. And with knowing that and having that within yourself, you can take that with you in so many other areas in your life. Where for me it started with my emotions, then I went into becoming more aware of my behavior, my facial expressions, how I use my body, my breathing was another one, being aware of my breathing in moments, developing that trust within myself of having that awareness of my breath, my body, then into my everyday life, starting to slowly but surely throughout the years, accumulate my list of what I know I can stand within when it comes to me trusting myself. So that then also in that journey and process throughout the years defined my definition of trust a lot more. The more I started living, my definitions of trust and self-trust, the more specified and defined my relationship with trust and self-trust became. Meaning where now I can say to you, my signature for when I know I've developed a trust, self-trust within myself, is an experience, a knowing of reliability, dependability, consistency, stability, perseverance, endurance, where, and this was also quite a profound realization when it comes to your trust, your self-trust standing untouchable or unwavering within you, that it was quite some time now after I started getting to know my relationship with my emotions, and I got to a stage or a phase within my life where, my emotions would come up, where usually I would immediately talk in them and break down and collapse and, almost so completely change just because the emotions would come up. But where I could in-breath, take a breath, sense the emotions that's coming up in my body, define them, in a quantum moment understand why they triggered and activated, where they come from. Am I reacting as a trigger, or is it a release, that's happening? And then from that moment, start assessing, directing, changing, moving myself. It was an extraordinary moment, seeing how I changed in my relationship with my emotions. But there were still moments in my process throughout the years, even though I know I've got a foundation of trust, self-trust within me when it comes to my emotions, there was sometimes things that happened where I just did not know what was going on in me. I knew things, new dimensions, new information opened up inside myself that I'd never faced before, because I was facing and experiencing things in my life that I'd never experienced or faced before. And there was a fleeting moment where I thought these experiences are challenging my self-trust, that, oh my goodness, my trust or my self-trust was broken. But then, fortunately, because I've been walking this process for many years, I took a breath and I said, no, you know what? I trust myself that, yes, I'm going through something I do not understand right now. And yes, it might be taking me a couple of weeks, but there's one thing I know, and that is I'm going to get through this. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to go back to the basics, which was writing about it, looking at it, understanding it, looking into it, and I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to understand myself within this. And then right there, another context or definition of trust and self-trust opened up that I didn't even realize that I, in a way, inadvertently developed throughout the years, which was that I trust myself, that I always push to understand me, to understand what's going on within me. Yes, sometimes it may take time, but I'm not going to give up on that. Yes, this is also what I really love about this process, redefining and living words. You develop certain expressions within yourself that you didn't even know that you had. But that moment right there showed me something extraordinary about trust and self-trust, and that is that it's in me, it's as me, it's not just something that can be broken. If anything, that foundation of trust and self-trust had guided me and strengthened me in a way where I stood unwavering within my trust and self-trust when it came to my emotions. And obviously there's a lot more within myself and my life I need to develop, and I'm always open to that development, expansion, definitioning. But it's been an extraordinary start, and this is what I would like for each one. And I mean, all those years ago started with one point. That was just me and my relationship with my emotions. And I just kept on practicing that. And from there, started looking at, okay, what else? Where else can I practice my definition of trust and self-trust? You see, and right there, you can see that stark difference between what we tend to do with our relationship with others, you know, how trust or trusting others has been this almost similar to having like a conflictual relationship. You know, I trust you, now I don't trust you. You know, all those polarities of betrayal and fighting and secrecy and things like that, or deception, lies. But I think overall, as I mentioned in the previous videos as well, it in a way showed us that, hey, you're looking at trust in the wrong places. Who are you as trust and self-trust? And when you get that, people, that foundation stands within yourself, absolutely. All right. So this then our journey and process of redefining words, some more sharing. But at least, I mean, I started becoming aware of that signature, that sensation, that experience of trust, of self-trust, after about 3-4 months walking my process consistently of, you know, getting to know my relationship with my emotions, where I got to that stand within myself with the knowing and the proof being that I can show myself and also others that, hey, this is the months or these are the years I've walked this process to develop this trust within myself, this knowing, this experience. It's not just a feeling. I mean, I'm not just someone who have this feeling of, oh, I trust myself. No, but years of my own proof in moments, in memories, in relationship with others. And that proof is even walked in such a way where I can guide other people in a similar process of showing you, look, this is what I walked all these years to get to this point of trust and self-trust within myself. Yes, you may not walk the exact same journey or process, but this is how to. And I mean, that is quite a gift that we can give to other people. You know, we're not just saying, oh, trust yourself. I mean, yes, you can very easily create a feeling of trust, but I mean, how long does those feelings actually really last? Rather, start this process of redefining, defining, and living words in a way where words become a substance within yourself that is a part of you that stands deep within you in every fiber of your being, your body, and yourself. Unwavering, untouchable, absolute. And it so much becomes a part of you where you can share with other people, you know, this is me, this is what I walked, and this is what I would also like for you. So this is another interesting dimension with redefining, defining, and living words. You know, we're not just saying, it's very easy to say trust yourself. It's another story to become the living word, trust and self-trust. All right, we'll continue more in videos to come, having a look at the living process, you know, where we face the mistakes, the falling, the standing up, the ups and the downs. Especially in the beginning couple of weeks. I'll go back to that as well, where I faced my most challenges, you know, because it's something new. You've never walked this process of defining and living words, you know. So there I would say I've got most to share, because that is the most difficult, that phase of the living. You know, where you look at your initial definition and you live and you realize, my definition was not practical enough, got to go back, amend it, okay. Let's go out there and try and live it again. But it's also the most fun because you are directly involved in your own self-creation process. You are creating you. You're challenging you. You're putting yourself out there, seeing what you're capable of and who you can become. That is the best version of you. All right. Thank you very much.